All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Telemedicine Talks. This is your co host, Phoebe Gutierrez, and we have, of course, Dr. Surfer, aka Leo. And today I'm really excited because we are joined by one of my colleagues, Nick Dosev. He leads product at a company that I'm working with right now called 100. And we are a functional medicine precision testing company, and I'm really excited to just have him share his story in just general digital health and just really how he got to where we're at, and kind of to share a little bit about what we're doing now, which is really cool. So welcome to the show, Nick.
Awesome. Welcome. Welcome. No, this is an exciting thing because, you've been with a lot of companies, building a lot of companies, building startups. And is this your first foray in telemedicine? Because I know you've been in a real estate associated company. So the question, we started doing this like 2 months ago. Growing up, being where you are now, when you were running around, kind of scared your parents' knees. What did you want to be when you grew up? Is this where you saw yourself back in preschool days?
Yeah. Man, it's putting me on the spot. So this is not an actual job, but I thought it was. So I'm gonna answer it this way, anyways. So my mom was a psychologist and educator at university. My dad was an artist, so I didn't have a super legit career to look at. So a lot of what I saw and what I thought a job was actually, honestly, I saw it on Batman. I watched Batman a lot. Hi, the most job was to put on a mask and go to 9 to 5 and go save people and execute justice on criminals and whatnot. So that was my early kind of childhood hero, but I thought that was a job. So I wore a cape as if I was going to work when I was a kid, for sure. But yeah, it's funny because I really thought technology, because there are a lot of high tech gadgets involved, kind of the idea that you need to circumvent the system or look at solutions outside the system to really be innovative, to really change things, to make a difference in your life. A lot of these kind of concepts that I find myself believing in now as an adult actually originate from those early days. So I'm not sure if I'm still a 3, 4 year old still wanting to be Batman or if I'm a head of product at a longevity company. But either way, I think some of the principles align pretty well.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing, right? And that's true, right? It's when you talk about in terms of jobs and your career path, right? It's not necessarily the traditional way, right? It's not the 9 to 5, right? It's not the clock in, clock out. And it's funny how things like that and your mindset is shaped by what you think where you're going to be, right? And this is why I love asking this question, right? And we get some interesting answers to that, right? And sometimes people start out in way left field, but it's funny how even coming back in way left field, it comes back and it ties into who they are and what they are foundationally. That's amazing. That's amazing. So yeah, we do want to focus on 100 and your telehealth and your time telemedicine, but like we were saying before, you didn't start there, right? You started in other markets and you found yourself here. Walk us through that journey and how you got there.
Yeah. So from an education perspective, I always lean toward analytics, data, business. That's always where my focus has been, where my skill has been, specifically on the management side. And I focused a lot of my study and what I wanted to focus my early career on was business and technology. I studied a little bit of engineering and a lot of business as a major and a minor at school. So when I got out of school, I jumped right into a really cool startup in the MarTech industry. They were in about the mid-stage startup. They had gotten their round A, they were going into their round B, learned a ton, and I immediately found my chops in being able to execute and operate very quickly. And throughout that cycle of working at our early stage startup, well, I always cared about being present every day, being highly effective. And a lot of that comes from health and how well you sleep, how you feed yourself. A lot of the differentiators I found in myself as an employee, as a contributor early on in my career, have to do with how well I was able to outlast and outperform my peers. And a lot of that honestly came from discipline in terms of how I treated my body and my mind. And I know these are not news to you all, but sleep and daily activity have been my mantras since I was in my teenage years, if not earlier. And it's really pushed me to be able to, again, get to that. So my early career was in MarTech. I worked there for about 5, 6 years, did really well, ended up leading multiple teams. And automation and AI started coming into play. That was in, yeah, I would say 2016, 2017 is when I started building my first truly autonomous AI systems within the marketing technology space. And as I started doing that, I got really excited about consumer technology. And
Mhm.
not only selling software to businesses that can use it to grow their own focus area, but actually building something that customers could touch. I could talk to them. I could see how they're using the product and really build upon a natural evolution from their feedback. So that's when I joined a couple of consumer startups serving the security space. And then later on, you mentioned in real estate, I worked on digital signature and other technologies that were fairly well established tech sectors, but were due and ripe for disruption of AI. And we actually built some really cool technologies with automation and AI driven categorization that push those into hypergrowth. So, anyways, we talked about how I got to health. I've always been within it throughout that life cycle and my hard work and many, many late nights working at these companies. I really found respite in learning about longevity, learning about fortitude, and keeping mine and my family's health in check as we dealt with different stressors, with different changes in life, as I got married, as I had kids. And eventually that just became such a major passion of mine that I connected with a founder of one of the companies I worked at who was also very passionate, who was getting in shit and working out like crazy and needed someone to chat with and work on ideas with. And the rest is history. I worked at a genetics testing company for a little bit, consulted for them, testing things like MTHFR, NTRR, gene variants, people's methylation, how their bodies actually are, what they're predisposed to, what recommendations you can give to people based on their genetic predispositions. And that eventually led me through all of the science and learning to thinking about longevity, which is the final frontier, right? How can we expand our lifespan? How can we get ourselves to live longer, better? And this is what I focused on now, hoping to reach a billion people do that.
Yeah. And that piece of medicine, especially longevity, has been a big boom, right? A big boom, especially with COVID, telemedicine. I think it went hand in hand, right? And now with kind of the technology out there and the way we practice medicine now, it's reaching out to everybody, right? Instead of kind of small little pockets. And a lot of times longevity and whatnot was focused on higher price points, higher demographics, so forth and so on. But now I think people are getting into it and now reaching out. And tell us how, technology nowadays too. You mentioned how technology and AI, how are you using those tools in terms of what 100 does? And how is that going to be unique versus everybody else out there that's doing longevity? And so what's kind of the split 100's using?
Yeah, we're in the early stage of the product life cycle, artificial intelligence, making it
Mhm.
for our daily lives. As someone that works in technology and that has been building AI projects since, like I said, the mid 2015, 2016, it feels to me like I've been using it for decades at this point, right? It has been a decade. But to the average person, they probably heard about ChatGPT for the first time in 2020, and they maybe started using it in their day-to-day life in 2022 when it started
Mhm.
being really, really good with V4 or 4.0, 4.0. And then from there, now all of a sudden we're starting to reach a kind of a mid-stage maturity. So when you ask, how am I using AI? In the early days, it was a lot of exploration and saving myself time. But now with all of the products that are starting to mature, we're using it in many respects. One, to audit, identify gaps, potential challenges, do analysis that before required subject matter expertise. whether that be in genetics, whether that be in clinical sciences, or potentially specific research. It allows us to get access to unlimited amount of resources and data repositories. So when you think about identifying meta-analyses and studies that show the impact of a supplement or of a particular micronutrient in a food to your health or to a biomarker like HSCRP or anything like vitamin D that's a little bit more simple and accessible to the day-to-day person, these things were really kept in a doctor's brain for decades. And you may or may not have had the ability to talk to them for 7 to 10 minutes a year, depending on your health insurance. And obviously, with AI coming into play and with the law of this data becoming more available at your fingertips and telemedicine converging as a really a service that is much more available digitally, I think we're due for a really amazing kind of inflection point in how health is not only organized but delivered to the population.
Actually, that's interesting because I don't know, maybe this is going to tell my age, but you're right. It's been only a few years that I've personally seen that medicine has been utilizing AI, other than, hey, please make my email better. Now we're realizing, or not even a full breath, but kind of just scratching the surface of what it can do. And I think a lot of us doctors, a lot of physicians are scared that AI will take over and overrun, I guess, our practice. But I think to some extent, there's a little fear in that. But just talking to you right now and realizing how it's used and how like hundreds using it, it's coming to light that it's a great tool that we could use to augment. Patients are going to come in a lot more educated, a lot more with research. And I think if we use it right and use it in conjunction with kind of our practice and whatnot, I think we can move the needle a lot further than what we were doing before. If we use it as a tool in conjunction and not necessarily see it as a threat, instead, see it as this force multiplier that we could use in practices, especially with physicians doing lifestyle, with the data that you get in certain like companies like 100, right? Because you guys you probably gather all this data using all these tools and compile it, right? So how do you see this product's niche and role in terms of the bigger sense of lifestyle?
Yeah. So what we're doing is nothing new from a human concept, right? We all function, no matter how much AI is out there and how many jobs are taken by AI or what things in our day-to-day lives are replaced by us using ChatGPT for. We're humans that respond in a human way. We learn the human way. And there's really kind of 3 stages to adapting to life, to learning, to improving. And whether it's a doctor telling you this, or it's a system or technology like 100, there's really step one, education. In order to be able to either comprehend or even get into the details of anything, you need to first get educated on what is it that I'm looking at here. And with medicine, with biology, with physiology, there's just so much information and so many processes that you need to be aware of that it's very complicated for a single person in a short session to give a patient all of that information. So you kind of rush through being empathetic and trying to make sure that they're there with you and that you're not overwhelming them. Our application, but also technology in general now allows for that first step of education to become much easier to consume at people's pace. So
Yeah.
the app I'm working on at the moment at 100 Health allows for that to happen at people's leisure when they're comfortable doing it and in their language. So we hyper personalize what we're saying to you. And again, AI is a huge player in this, right? So how can I speak to Leo who lives in Hawaii, who has these types of challenges or this type of preference for how he wants to be spoken to as compared to Nick, who lives in Sacramento and is focused on his 2-month-old baby at the moment. So how am I going? Yeah, and I'm not sleeping very much right now.
Good
but-
luck with that.
Yeah. But
What's your sleep score? What's your sleep score? That's what I want to know.
the good thing is I'm religious about my sleep. So I'm in the 80s, but I'll talk more about that later. So the education piece, how receptive you are really comes from how much you connect to how the information is given to you. So the education piece is hugely affected. So what happens after education is, okay, I know a bunch of things now about 109 biomarkers, or I know a ton about my heart health. I understand how triglyceride impact me. I understand how my HDL versus LDL impact me. Great. So how do I now analyze my results? I go get a test, or I learn something about my body. I know I'm educated to be able to understand what it means. So now how do I process changes as things trend? So that analysis piece is also again aided by a lot of the technology, and people's brains were made for understanding emotion, reacting quickly to danger. There's a lot of Darwinism there. We're still trying to grapple with in terms of fear, reactivity. And when you're looking at a lot of data on charts, it very quickly gets confusing and the mind kind of numbs to it. And it doesn't matter if you're an engineer or if you're someone that maybe doesn't really deal with spreadsheets every day, it's still pretty challenging. So after education, analysis is hugely aided by having something explained to you in an analogy. I can tell you that imagine, that what you're doing is, like the pistons in an engine. And now people can all of a sudden visualize an engine. The piston, if you're a car person, right, we're very precise to you. You could understand how it works. Play sports. It could be a sports analogy, for example, if you're a soccer player or a football player. So now we're translating things and the analysis becomes much more grounded in what you care about. And the most important, which is the third step here, so we did education, we did analysis. So now the final step is, what do I do? Action. What can I actually take into account with all of these things that I just picked up? It was really well laid out for me. How can I actually implement things into my life? And this is where 100 really shines, but really what I'm hyper focused on is someone in tech, is someone in product. We have built technologies for decades now that just give us data visualizations, just allow us to make our own conclusions. We now have the ability to get an app that I can take a picture of a menu with, and it could tell me what to order based on my biomarkers that came back from the lab. It can literally tell me based on my LDL ratings whether I should eat that steak or not. Or maybe whether I should replace that with a salmon instead and maybe binge on the potatoes on the side. And we can truly do that with technology end to end now, rather than having to rely on, okay, well, I need to hire a nutritionist to do this for me. You're able to combine all of these, the learning. So long story short, it's these simple ways of going through the process is education, analysis, and action. But historically, we've had people help us through this, and now we're getting the ability to do it much faster, almost instantly on our devices.
Yeah, I know that's true because with AI, with everything, it's taking a lot faster, getting a whole crap load of information and breaking it down at breakneck speed, right? That's amazing. Just another person telling me not to eat that lechon that I really want to eat, I guess. And I'm eating the lechon, but it's gonna happen.
I think too, just to kind of emphasize that is like, I think part of my criticism with healthcare has always been like, doctors get a few minutes with patients. Y'all do not speak the same language I speak. And I have had this very interesting career where I've gotten to work with people like you, like my whole adult life, to where it's like, I could actually go, okay, you said intubate. What the heck does that mean? You guys give me the analogy, you explain something and make it to a place where it actually sticks in my head. And most people, 99% of Americans do not get that. We are looking, we are Googling, we are trying to figure things out because the system is just not trained. And it's not a knock on doctors. You guys are in your vacuum with other doctors.
Weirds. You don't like our doctor jokes when they get together? It's hilarious. I know.
The funniest thing is they'll sit and they'll share jokes and they're all laughing. And I
Oh, dude, we think it's hilarious. Yeah, we can't get our non-doctor friends, and we're like, what? This is funny.
Let me explain the joke to you. It's funny.
No, this brings up a great point. And it's not inherent in that, right? Well, okay, this is a generalization, right? I know some doctors that are great at it. This one is not included. So, yes, tools like that can give information, help me relay it in ways that is relatable, is connectable, and in ways that they can understand it better than I, because, it's just not my paradigm to do it that way. So you're right. That's an amazing kind of tool to do that.
And to shine some light also on some of my past works, I spent a lot of time working on SEO and ads and analyzing them as a career, as a product manager in that space, right? In technology. We all heard of how horrible social media and content is and how ads are targeted using a bunch of information that companies have gathered on you to really drive a sale of a product. All of that work for decades of developing app tech, it's actually really, really helpful now when I'm thinking about health technology because you're trying to really precisely gather and precisely target an individual's preferences and explain things to them that are very complex oftentimes, but you need to make it palatable. And honestly, as we do, we focus on the easiest ways to make money first. So ads came first, but now we're actually using that power for good, right? And with this great power comes great responsibility that we actually make a difference. We want to make sure that there's an impact of the recommendations we're making. But that's why it's so impactful, right? To actually use this technology such as AI, not for getting people to use products, but getting people to get better, feel better, form good habits. And I think that's where we're going. That's what we're building at the moment, which is super exciting.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I love that comic analogy too, though. It's the wrong universe, though.
The PC market can duke
I
it
know
out.
you're gonna have the nerds out there going, dude, that's the random universe. Anyway, no, I totally get it. You're right. And for the entrepreneurs out there that are listening, hopefully there's more than a few. What is your advice on how to approach this and how to utilize these tools to make something effective? It's all out there. People are trying to use it. You use it successfully throughout your career. Is there certain steps, certain things you could impart to be like, hey, this is probably a better way to use this and approach it?
Yeah, there's always this big dilemma of buy versus build. Whenever you're starting a new business, especially in tech, is you want to consider, hey, do I spend a bunch of time building something custom that really helps me do exactly what I need to perfection, but I'm going to have to spend a lot more time building it, or do I just buy off the shelf, spend the money? Well, I think what's happening now is that dilemma is actually getting much shorter time frame so that building things yourself becomes much less of a necessity or a need to get the right output because you can prompt engineer, because you can context engineer. So to break that down a little bit, what I'm trying to say with all of this tech lingo that I'm throwing out there is that it's really important right now, more than ever, to take a real use case. And when you're building new technology, using a new AI model, using a new RAG and with a vector database, put a real life event through it. Go end to end. Put yourself as the specific use case and deliver the results to yourself as the patient, for example. I want to see what Nick should be able to see as the patient. And we can do that so much faster now. I don't need to ask an engineer. And Phoebe and I joke that we vibe code all the time, but we truly use Quad to develop technologies that we're imagineering, to develop all of the context, and then give ourselves the result of an analysis of my genetic sequencing that I got from a company for myself or for all of my biomarkers and what the information we can process through that and what the output is in terms of specific recommendations. Just the other day, I downloaded all of my wearable data. So I wear an Apple Watch and I have an iPhone that tracks my steps. So I have a sleep mattress that tracks my sleep. I grabbed all of that information from 365 days for the past 12 months, uploaded into Claude, and generated a functional app that actually analyzed what my life has been like, what my stress levels have been like, and what I should do next in order to optimize both my workouts, my stress levels, and my sleep. And it was pretty damn good. So, long story short, it's now more important than ever to put yourself in the shoes of the person you're building for and use these technologies to truly derive something valuable, not just something cool, not just something that's AI driven, but is that output actually moving the needle? Am I going to use that Claude app that I built to actually change how I work out because I'm way too exhausted and I work myself to death, right? When I'm actually likely losing muscle mass because I'm working out too often. I just learned that from a Claude app that I developed in an hour. So it's pretty cool.
How long before this would that app take to actually develop?
So someone's going to call me out on this, that there were easier ways to do this before, but from my experience, right, you need to, one, extract the data somewhere. So I need to put it in a spreadsheet or a database. Most of the time, if you're building anything app related, you probably want to start with a database. You don't want to mess around with spreadsheets, but so that'd be one. So you need a database. Then once you get the data, you put it into some sort of processing. So it needs to be analyzed. So someone needs to build a model or identify a model for you. And finally, you have to get a designer to build a front end to actually present the information in a way that you understand it. So I would say maybe a couple of weeks for me to actually something that makes any sense. And that's someone that has an engineering team and a UX team available to them. Imagine if you're an entrepreneur with zero funds to start. It's impossible. It's going to take you months. And I was able to do it in an hour.
He taught me how to do this, and it's dangerous because you can literally, like, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm building my role at 100 is really building out the female experience side. So, really expanding and really building an inclusive place for women to come and learn about perimenopause, menopause, fertility based on all this data that they can say is like, we're getting your wearable data, your temperature, like, okay, maybe, you're ovulating or whatever, right? Before, it would have taken me months to come up with strategies and be able to visualize certain things. And you're able to literally talk to Claude and be like, build me an app that has these things, but blah, blah, blah. And it's not the prettiest thing, but it pops some stuff out. Again, it really speeds up the process of just you getting there. And it's really interesting. And I don't think too many people even know that these things exist. I definitely didn't until I saw Nick's wearable data and I was like, I want to do that. And then I tried and it was like, what?
Yeah, I'm just crazy Googling it right now. I'm like, what is this tool? Like literally just clueless about it.
Yeah. So this is instant prototyping. That's really kind of what you're effectively doing here. Again, those in the tech sector have been working with tools to do this for the past few years, and many are even way farther ahead than what I'm doing today. They're building whole apps on their own. There's the whole race to the first one-person billion-dollar company, right, in Silicon Valley right now. But for the average person that this is not the core of their existence to how many chat GPT queries can they write in an hour, right? They're working, they have kids, they have lives, they have jobs that are very meaningful, that don't have to do with sitting in front of a computer. These are new things. And to the fact that you can take something that's really complex in your life, and I've talked to Phoebe about some of the cool things she's built with automation, deriving recipes for her family each week, and some of the really cool apps that she's built on her own. But these are some daily tasks and activities that are applicable to an entrepreneur that is starting off and wants proof of concept and really get something out to a couple of users or to themselves that really shows proof of value and a good idea, to the everyday mom or dad that's really struggling for time and needs a solution for their day to day and just can't figure out how to. And I think Phoebe's story is great. I'll let her tell it. But like, if you have a family that you're trying to feed and everyone has preferences on what meal they want to eat and how much variety, I mean, that's a complicated problem. And lucky for me, I have AI with little kids now to figure it out. But you've had to do that for a while. So that was a really cool application as well.
Oh, you guys are nice parents. I'm like, you eat what's there or you starve.
That is definitely not even true because I've heard him. He's like, you guys want boba? You guys want Pokeballs? You guys.
Well, they love their Pokeballs. It's always a win. It's always a win.
I think the interesting thing is, I think with technology, again, for other people who've listened to the show, I'm very tough when it comes to the AI in healthcare conversation because I have consulted for several companies. I've worked with companies. I've witnessed it being done poorly. And for me, with my compliance background, my consumer background, my general like empathetic nature of I always am going to think about the patient perspective. I don't think it's the right thing to do to build something that is clinically inaccurate just because it's quick and easy and removes
Mm.
the doctor element and makes things just for profit. Whereas, like, I think the really interesting thing is, again, like the reason I joined the company was because this was the first one. I even told Julia, like, this is the first company where I'm like, hey, they're actually doing AI really well.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting in terms of learning different things every day. We're constantly tweaking stuff, but we have a solid clinical advisory team that we're running things by. And again, it's like, if you're going to do it right. And like, that's my biggest fault with this AI boom is everyone wants to like brace for this. We're going to build this thing. And then it's like, there's no looking back at like, what about patients? Is this even clinically correct? And does this even make sense?
No, it's funny because, yeah, you definitely had strong opinions about AI and how it was running things. So when you were like, oh, I believe in this company that was relying on AI, I was like, you the same, Phoebe? You sure? And so, no, that speaks volumes, especially with your compliance background, because, yeah, you're very particular on how things are used and how things are utilized, which is the slipshod way that people do it sometimes. Just, you're right. It leaves gaps and holes. And, that Swiss cheese is just huge, just waiting to find faults. So, that's
It's just
amazing.
it's dangerous for me. Again, it's like people are trusting, right? I go back to we call a doctor because we don't know. We don't know. And we all understand like right now healthcare is tough with insurance and 2026 you're gonna have so many people who don't even have insurance. But my biggest thing is again, we're doing this to protect patients. If you're doing it to
Yeah.
just make money, you're doing it for the wrong reason. And again, I can say all the things about other companies, but at the very least, I can say, like, our goal here, or at least my goal, what I'm really working on, and I know I partner with Nick every single day, like, our main emphasis is, like, this has to be like, we have to always keep the patient perspective in mind, and, like, we have to do the right thing, even if it requires a crap ton of work and pulling back the layers and figuring out certain things or talking to 1,000 doctors and getting 1,000 opinions, but I digress.
Everyone thinks there's right too, right? Like, we're never wrong.
I'm like, okay, I don't even know who to trust at this point. But to me, you got to do the dirty work to get to the amazing place that we're going to be in 6 months, a year, as this thing kind of continues evolve. It's home built, it's homegrown. But to me, I think that's the beautiful thing. How cool is it that Nick really gets to sit here and craft this thing that he's really passionate about? You can't tell, but like Nick has the biggest arms I've ever seen in real life. I'm getting to really focus on this female side of the hormonal journey because I'm super passionate about it. And I think that to me is like at the end of the day, like 100 is being built for Nicks and for Phoebes and for people who don't know this stuff. I'm pumped about it. I mean, you could tell, like, I'm really
Yeah.
into it.
No, this is exciting because the passion, it's really there. You can hear it in the voice and you can actually see it. And it's almost refreshing how this is personal, right? This is not just for money. This is really built for you, by you, for your family, so forth and so on. And you're sharing what you're learning and what you're building. So I think that's one of the most impressive aspects of this is that, hey, this is not a how do I make money idea. It's like, this is what I really care about. Let me share it. And I'm going to do a really damn good job because, well, I'm putting myself on the line as well.
Yeah. And part of it is like if the world runs on money, so it's like we have to have the money conversation at some point. But it's like it's this thing where it's like there's nothing like this on the market. So like we're gonna make money because like, again, it's so different, right? Like, I mean, Leo, you work with so many companies. The first thing they're doing is like, let's prescribe. And like, what did I tell you? I was like, we prescribed food
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we prescribed food and
Everything
exercise.
in sleep,
Yeah.
all things that I'm not really good at. So I'm like, oh, maybe I should look into this. So
Yeah. Somebody signed Leo up. He needs a prescription.
So I don't even know what sleep is. My sleep score is like 30. So the mix, like, what the heck?
Yeah, you gotta track that, man. Mine's better, and I have it too.
I know. I think mine was like 20 with a 2, but nah, actually, no, that's not what I slept right through it. But so yeah.
Where I was going to jump into something that you and Phoebe both mentioned, which is that personal story and connection all the way from relying and putting that in front of your tech right away and making it personal, because that's going to result in a better outcome. If you really care about it and are passionate about it, it translates all the way through. The one really cool thing about health and telehealth and tech, or in general within the health sector, is everyone has a health story. Not everyone has a gym story or a supplement story, but every single person has a health story. Someone's mom's gotten sick. You may have dealt with a personal illness, or have been potentially been taken out, or have day-to-day pains and aches. Well, you might be dealing with a long-term inflammation issue that you don't have answers for. And I used to think when we first started 100, and we started building our health tech company from scratch, that just like other tech sectors, culture fit's really important. You need to make sure you have a good culture fit. We intervene for
Yeah.
people. Many people have a lot of passion. You're hearing Phoebe. I mean, she lives and breathes this stuff. She cares about the patient. She cares about the technology. She cares about that we do the right thing. I do as well. But the thing that I realized after we're almost 13, 14 months in, everybody's a culture fit in a health technology space. Everyone has a story. We have folks on the team that have dealt with biomarkers that are intensely out of range, and they've discovered things about themselves that they never would have guessed. So they never had necessarily known issues in the past, and they tested, and now they're looking at their lipase and their amylase, and they're understood that they maybe had a challenge that they didn't realize was actually an issue before, and it is. You have people who are coming in with an understanding that life is short, myself included. I was born with atrial septal defect, which is a perforation or a gap in between the atriums in the heart. And I was given a health span of about 55 years old, at which point I was going to have to be on breathing apparatus for a myriad of reasons. And I lived majority of my life through my teens thinking that that's it. 55 is my ceiling, so I better make the best of it, because if I drink, if I smoke, if I sleep poorly, that my ceiling is 55, not 100. So I only have this much. So I better take care of what I got. And then as time progressed, as medicine and as technology got better and better, which I'm super grateful for, in 1998, there was a big breakthrough. In 2008, there was another one, to the point where in 2017, I got a surgery that basically corrected that issue for me. And all of a sudden, now I have potentially the hope for a 100+ year old life that just opened up for me. I'm not gonna have to be on a breathing machine, walking around with poor respiration or with potentially an enlarged heart. And that's my personal story. That's why I do this. But I was like, oh, I must be unique. I must be the only one that cares. And every single person in our company in this space has this personal connection. And I think that's what's going to drive the innovation at the end of the day. It's not going to be AI. It's this inherent passion that we all have because of something that we lived through or we live with.
That's a great point. You're right. But it's health is on everybody's mind, if they think it or not, right? It's your day to day. And yeah, it's a big driver, whether it's you, your family, loved ones, so forth and so on. You're right. And that's an interesting fact that, yeah, in these companies, right? And the companies that I've seen that are very successful have these stories, have people that are very passionate in their niche that they are working in because they have these stories, right? So we are coming in time, but it's that last question. Okay. So we always like to ask, if you could go back in a time machine and talk to you the day after you graduated from college and say, hey, this is the one piece of advice I need to give you, knowing what I know now, what would it be?
Good question. Honestly, I will tell myself to do exactly as I would like to do. Every challenge I've met, every failure I've had, every learning I've hit has made me who I am today. And I have to say, from the people around me that I work with, to the family that I have, to some of the failures that I've had, I couldn't be more proud. And honestly, what I'm building today is exactly what I want to do or where I want to be. And that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't decided to take a job at Target right after graduating college and say, I can do a little bit more than that. And then really dug into tech and built in a space where I wasn't necessarily as passionate about, but learned a ton about operations and gotten good at product. So long story short, I think I would say live to the fullest and do as you do in order to get those learnings and live a full life. But lots more to do, but that's what I would say.
That's awesome. No, thank you so much for taking your time. Totally appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing what 100's going to become, and especially what it is now. And yeah, super excited about it. Phoebe, do you got anything?
No, just thanks for tolerating me every day, Nick. And Leo. Leo has to tolerate me too.
And vice versa.
No, it was a great talk. And you know what? We'd love to get you back on in the future and get an update and say, and learn more from your kind of path and how you built this company. Looking forward to that if you'd want to go on. So, yeah, no, thank you so much. How do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, you can email me at nick@100.com. I will respond eventually. I promise I'm pretty busy, but I'll get back to you. But download our app at 100 Health on the App Store or just go to 100.com. It's a pretty easy domain spelled out HUNDRED.com.
Yeah, I'm surprised that domain was still available. That's such a simple domain.
It wasn't an easy get, but we got some really brilliant founders that, did some clever negotiations. And we got
Nice. Yeah. So, and yeah, if you want to contact Phoebe at telemedicinetalks.com, Leo at telemedicinetalks.com. Thank you all for listening and catch you all next time.